my show, Oprah was a fabulous woman when she was on network TV, and Oprah did a lot of, Oprah's show was just a different vibe than mine. I don't intend on turning my show into the Oprah show. I intend on doing my hot topics. I want to giggle and wiggle, and I still want to be a fabulous oasis for people to come once a day for an hour and have a good time, and then we all go home. I don't have a lot of kumbaya moments. I enjoyed them on Oprah, but I'm not, I have to do a show that's true to my personality, and my personality is responsible, reliable, and accountable. I will be 47 this month, so what I want you to do when you turn on the Wendy show is know that you can take an oasis from your own problems. Because when I do my show, it's taking an oasis from my own life. So no, I am not devoid of Oprah.
Okay, well, speaking of your own life, the
only reason why people say that is because we're both black.
This isn't just a celebrity breakdown story anymore. It looks like something far more calculated was happening right in front of our eyes, and nobody caught it in time. Because insiders say what happened to Wendy Williams wasn't random, it wasn't sudden, and it definitely wasn't just health issues. It looks like a slow unraveling, engineered step by step. Think about it. One day she's at the top of daytime television, untouchable, unfiltered, saying things nobody else had the courage to say, especially about Oprah Winfrey. And then suddenly, slurred speech, confusion, strange on-air moments, memory lapses that didn't make sense. The internet called it a meltdown, but insiders say, what if it wasn't? What if those moments weren't natural at all? Because now there are growing whispers that something was happening behind the scenes, something subtle, something controlled. It looks like people close to her, including Kevin Hunter and Sharina Hudson, may have been part of a much bigger situation than anyone realized at the time. And the most disturbing part? Some believe this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about control. Control over her image, control over her career, control over her life. Because the more Wendy spoke out, the more unpredictable things around her became. And now people are asking a question that sounds almost unbelievable. What if Wendy Williams didn't fall apart on her own? What if she was slowly pushed there? And if that's true, then who was really pulling the strings behind the scenes? Because this story, it's only getting darker.
About not agreeing with my music, but she thought I did great in the movie. And of course, I was up there with the whole cast of Crash. And so I didn't necessarily feel like that needed to be said. You didn't agree with my music. And even if you don't agree with certain songs I made, say you don't agree with certain songs, don't say you just don't agree with all of mine.
On television was never the full story. It looks like what was happening behind the scenes was far more calculated than anyone realized. Because insiders say Wendy Williams didn't just fall off the way the media framed it. It looks like something was shifting around her long before the public ever noticed. One minute she's dominating daytime TV, loud, fearless, saying the things nobody else would dare to say, especially when it came to powerful figures like Oprah Winfrey. And then suddenly, everything changes. Slurred words, strange pauses, moments that didn't feel like her. Viewers started asking questions, but instead of answers, they got a narrative. She's unstable, she's struggling, she's losing control. But what if that wasn't the full truth? Because the more you look back, the more it feels like those moments didn't just happen. They built up. Slowly. Consistently. Almost like something was pushing her off balance little by little. And here's where things start getting uncomfortable. Because according to people close to the situation, her daily routine never changed. Same set, same crew, same tea she drank every single episode. Simple, right? But insiders now suggest it may not have been that simple at all. There are whispers that what she was consuming on set may have been altered in ways she didn't know about. Subtle enough to avoid suspicion, but strong enough to affect behavior over time. Not instantly, not dramatically, just enough to make her seem off. And once that image stuck, everything else started falling into place. Because now the narrative writes itself. She's not well. She can't handle this anymore. She needs help. And the moment that idea took hold publicly, control started shifting, away from her and toward the people around her.
Weight Watchers, plus she's got that investment with Weight Watchers, so she's like a boss and a dieter at the same time. There are a few pounds to lose. But if she doesn't lose any weight at all, and all she is a boss at Weight Watchers, you girls, don't be mad at Oprah because you guys dropped the football and she picked it up and ran to the bank with it.
But if you thought Kevin Hunter and Sharina Hudson keep coming up in these conversations, insiders say their roles may have been deeper than anyone realized at the time. Not just personal betrayal, but something tied to influence behind the scenes. Because the more Wendy spoke out, especially about powerful industry figures, the more isolated she seemed to become. And that's where the timeline starts raising questions. Her health declines, her behavior becomes unpredictable, her credibility gets questioned, and then her control disappears. Financial decisions, career direction, public image, all slipping out of her hands at the exact moment she could no longer defend herself the same way. And insiders say that's not a coincidence, because once the public believes you're unstable, you don't have to be silenced loudly. You can be managed quietly. And that's what some people now believe may have happened here. Not overnight, not obviously, but strategically. Because while everything around Wendy was collapsing, the people connected to her situation, they stayed protected, untouched. And the most chilling part, Wendy had been calling things out for years, challenging narratives, questioning power, saying what others wouldn't. So now the question isn't just what happened to her, it's whether she saw it coming before it was too late. Because if insiders are right, this wasn't just a downfall. It looks like a setup. And if that's true, then the real story hasn't even been told yet.
And that is, I did assault and inappropriately touch my sister in manners that were not comfortable for her. And for that, I apologize.
Brother ever apologized to you?
The apology that I got from my brother is, if you think I did something wrong, then I'm sorry.
They were my exact words to my sister. Well, there's no more if you think I did it. You were absolutely right with what you said. I did it.
Now, there's two parts to Oprah Winfrey that I haven't really spoken about publicly.
It looks like the deeper you go into this story, the harder it becomes to ignore the pattern forming around Wendy Williams. Because insiders say what happened after those early on-air moments may have been even more calculated than anyone realized. Because once the narrative of instability took hold, everything started moving faster. Suddenly, conversations behind the scenes weren't about her success anymore. They were about her condition, her reliability, her ability to continue. And according to people familiar with the situation, that shift changed everything. Because the moment doubt enters the room, control quietly follows. And that's when the second phase allegedly begins. It looks like decisions started being made around Wendy instead of by Wendy. Meetings she wasn't fully part of, financial conversations she couldn't fully access, and eventually moves that positioned her as someone who needed oversight instead of independence. Insiders say this is where the situation becomes less about image and more about control. Because once someone is perceived as vulnerable, it becomes easier to justify intervention. And that's exactly what started happening. Her accounts became restricted, access became limited, and the same system that once relied on her voice began treating her like a liability instead of an asset. But here's where things take an even darker turn. Because according to ongoing speculation, the people closest to her weren't necessarily trying to stop it. Names like Kevin Hunter continue to surface in discussions about what was happening behind the scenes. And insiders suggest that his influence didn't just end with personal betrayal. It may have extended into decisions that affected her stability, both publicly and privately. And then there's Sharina Hudson, whose presence in the timeline raises even more questions about how long certain dynamics were in place before the public caught on. Because if this was only about a relationship, it wouldn't explain the timing. It wouldn't explain the coordination. And it definitely wouldn't explain how quickly everything escalated once Wendy started losing control. Which brings the focus back to something even bigger. Because insiders say Wendy's outspoken nature, especially when it came to powerful figures like Oprah Winfrey, may have played a role in how isolated she became over time. Not directly, not publicly, but gradually. Because the more she challenged certain narratives, the less support seemed to exist when things started going wrong. And that absence?
You mess with my family. You mess with my mother, my father. She called me about my brother, right? And I said, listen, everybody can change. He wanted to apologize for molesting me. She said, Monique, would it be okay that he comes on? And would you like to come on? I said, I don't want nothing to do with that cat, but I don't want to get in the way of his blessing. If he's changing, I don't want to stop that. She never said my mother. She never said my father. Now, I know who my parents were because they're both gone. I know who they are. I know my mother's greed. I know my father's greed. And you did not say that you were going to have my parents. Because had you said you had my mother, now we had a conversation and I said to her, me and my mother are not.
Ignore. Her health declines. Her behavior gets questioned. Her credibility weakens. And right at that moment, control shifts completely. Not just over her career, but over her finances, her decisions, and even her ability to speak for herself. Insiders say once that level of control is established, reversing it becomes almost impossible. Because everything is now justified under one idea: protection. But protection for who? Because while Wendy's world was shrinking, the system around her was stabilizing, profiting, continuing. And that's what raises the biggest question of all. If this was truly about helping her, why did everything benefit everyone else more than it benefited her? Because the deeper this story goes, the more it starts to look like Wendy didn't just lose control of her career, she lost control of her entire narrative. And once that happens, the truth becomes whatever the system decides it is, which leaves one final question still hanging in the air. If this was all just a series of unfortunate events, then why does it look so carefully timed?
Lose these legs, I can't lose this face.
I'll never forget your interview with Oprah Winfrey, who opened the door for you, for me. You brought something out of Oprah that I had never seen before. She was laughing, she was light, and you could tell that she understood that you knew and know who you are. And that's something I haven't seen before or since, so I want to make sure I give you your flowers. Do you have any other dream guests, Sherry, out there?
You make me cry.
It's the truth, Sherry. You are that girl, and I want you to know that because I've been watching and studying Oprah since I was 9 years old. And for the first time in my life, I went, whoa. She went from being idol to auntie, friend, bestie, and it was because of you.
It looks like the story doesn't end with control being taken. Insiders say that was only the midpoint, not the conclusion. Because once Wendy Williams was positioned as unstable, the next phase allegedly became about maintaining that image at all costs. And that's where things start feeling even more calculated. Because viewers remember the moments, the pauses, the confusion, the times she seemed disconnected from her own show. At the time, it was labeled as decline. But now, people are revisiting those clips and asking a different question. What if those moments weren't just symptoms, but reinforcement? Because insiders say once a narrative like that is established, it has to be fed continuously. Small incidents become headlines, minor slip-ups become proof, and over time, the public stops questioning the story. They accept it. And once that happens, you don't need to explain anything anymore. You just manage perception. It looks like that's exactly what may have happened here.
Okay, so is there plans for a new show, or are you coming back to the Wendy Williams show?
Coming back to the Wendy Williams show. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Because I know they were talking about Sherry Shepherd taking over the show, a new, what?
But I won't be watching her because I know what she's going to be doing, and that's really not my thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
because while Wendy's on-screen presence became more unpredictable, decisions behind the scenes became more controlled. Appearances were managed, access was limited, and according to speculation, even the environment around her may have been carefully structured to keep her in a certain state, functional enough to appear, but unstable enough to justify oversight. And that balance? That's where things get disturbing. Because insiders say keeping someone in that position benefits everyone except the person at the center of it. The network continues, the brand survives, the revenue flows, but the individual? They slowly disappear from their own story. And the names connected to this timeline, Kevin Hunter, Sharina Hudson, still raise questions about how much influence existed behind the scenes while everything was unfolding publicly. Because if this was only about personal betrayal, it wouldn't explain the scale. It wouldn't explain the coordination, and it definitely wouldn't explain how quickly the system adjusted once Wendy's position weakened. Which brings everything back to a much bigger layer. Because insiders say Wendy's history of calling out powerful figures, including Oprah Winfrey, may have played a role in how this entire situation unfolded over time. Not in a way that's easy to prove.
Are you thinking about it? Tired of working so hard, being gracious at what I do, getting paid a fraction of the cost. I'm tired of...
Not in a way that's ever directly stated, but in a way that shows up in absence. Because when things started collapsing around Wendy, very few powerful voices stepped in publicly to support her. And in an industry where alliances matter, that silence stands out. Now here's where the timeline reaches its most uncomfortable point. Her platform disappears. Her voice is reduced. Her ability to respond is limited. And the narrative? It's already been written. Because once someone is framed a certain way long enough, any attempt to push back starts to sound like confirmation of the same story. And insiders say that's what makes situations like this almost impossible to escape. Because the system doesn't just take control, it controls how the story is remembered. And that's why even now, the questions aren't going away. Because people are starting to look at everything again, The interviews, the clips, the timing, and realizing how much of it doesn't fully add up. Was this really just a public downfall driven by personal struggles? Or was it something more structured, something that unfolded quietly while everyone was watching? Because if there's even a chance that this was managed behind the scenes, then the real story of Wendy Williams hasn't been told yet. And the people who know the truth, they're still not talking. It looks like this story isn't slowing down. If anything, insiders say it's only getting more complicated the deeper people start digging.
As a public downfall is now being re-examined piece by piece, and the timeline still isn't sitting right with a lot of people watching closely. That right there, at the time it was dismissed as another troubling sign. But now, people are asking if moments like that were part of a much bigger picture, one that wasn't fully understood in real time. Because insiders say when you line everything up, the behavioral shifts, the sudden loss of control, the financial restrictions, the isolation, it starts to look less random and more structured. And here's where it escalates. Because even a fraction of these claims are true, then this wasn't just about one person struggling publicly. It looks like a system operating quietly in the background. A system that can shift narratives. A system that can decide when someone is fit and when they're not. And once that label sticks, everything changes. Because insiders say once control moves behind closed doors, it becomes nearly impossible to reverse, especially when the public has already accepted the version of events being presented. So now the focus isn't just on what happened to Wendy Williams, it's on who benefits from how it happened. Because while one story was collapsing in front of the world, another one was being protected behind the scenes. And that's the part people can't ignore anymore. Because if this was all just coincidence, then why does every piece seem to fall into place so perfectly? And if it wasn't, then what else hasn't been said yet? Because insiders say the truth doesn't disappear, it just waits. And if that's the case here, this story, it's far from over.